in visiting with somebody just Saturday from the Rifle area, she said from the air, the land is just crisscrossed with roads now. There's a cloud of dust in the valley from the air. Simply, she said there's, who knows whether it's smog or dust, but it's probably a lot of it is dust. So there's roads being built crisscrossing property, wells that in some time past could only be put in on one well per 60 acres or something. That has been compromised down to where you can have wells much closer. She said there's people who turn on their water and they can light it with a match. And she said the whole valley stinks.
If you talk to people, they'll say, well, I see smog when I look over to Parachute, and you never saw that 5 years ago. So I mean, there's kind of an anecdotal feeling of that there's regional air quality impacts, which even here in Glenwood, without drilling rigs being downwind, there's concern here about that.
We have production pits, which when they're drilling a well, they have an open pit, and they get a flow back of this drilling mud, of the fracking fluids, also of any liquid hydrocarbons that are underground as well, which in the natural gas business they call condensate. And those things flow back along with produced water, which is highly saline. Now sometimes they take this and they truck it off and process it somewhere, but a lot of times it's just left in the pit to evaporate. And there are just numbers and numbers of oil and gas commission files with spills of produced water into the river, or spills of condensate into the river, or on roadways or at pads. And I have a video that I can provide you with of a fire at a well just south of Silt this past year in March, and it was just a monstrosity, flames reaching 200 feet high at least.
That's always been a concern, and to what degree is a small town fire department, really does it have the equipment and the knowledge to respond to these? It's been a safety concern.
When you hear an oil and gas company testify that they want to do their operations the correct way, and they want to respect, the health and well-being and environmental issues that the local citizens are concerned about, what's your reaction to that?
They're lying. They're lying. Every one of them comes in. That's what you ask when they come in the door is, oh, are you the one that's going to lie today?
You should know, and everybody else who lives anywhere on top of a gas field should know, that the two most important words that you will ever hear from a gas man is for now.
For now.
For now. This is what we want, for now. We're not going to tell you what we may come back and ask you later.
There are many different land use impacts and public health potential impacts, environmental impacts that can occur when you bring heavy industry into a rural, residential, or agricultural area.
What we discovered for Colorado basically are that there are 171 products that we now know are in use, and that they have 245 chemicals in them. 91% of the chemicals in use had at least one health effect. So, and then the 9% for which we had that had no health effects does not mean they didn't have any health effect. Either there was no information on the chemical, or we were told that a chemical was proprietary. Also, what we discovered was that 35% of the products contain endocrine disruptors, which was much to our surprise. An endocrine disruptor is a chemical that interferes with the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system actually involves parts of the brain that most people don't even realize. The control center for the endocrine system is in the brain, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, but it includes the thyroid glands. It's not only the sex organs. Then you've got the pancreas that produces insulin. Insulin is a hormone. The endocrine system basically is a very, very sensitive system that controls how a baby is constructed. It's how a baby gets programmed before it's born, so how it will function and behave and think later on in life. And they operate at very, very low concentrations, in the range of about a part per trillion. So when industry tells us that we shouldn't worry that it's only in our water at a very low concentration, or it's only in our air at such a low concentration. They have not taken into consideration, and they haven't looked to find out what these chemicals can do to that developing baby in a pregnant woman, and to our children as they're maturing, and to some very, very sensitive people as they mature later in life. Huge, huge compressors sitting there. Big compressors, 500 horsepower, 1,500 horsepower compressors that run, remember, 24 hours a day. You don't dare let that pressure reduce. You've got to keep this thing pumping. So they're burning tremendous amount of diesel to keep these things going. Diesel, when you burn it, and gasoline produce nitrogen oxides. So you've got the nitrogen oxides going up, you've got the VOCs escaping from this equipment, and that, when it gets up in the air in the presence of sunlight, produces ozone. One molecule of ozone gets into the lungs, into the very deep alveolar tissue, that very moist, flexible tissue in the lung where your oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. This is what keeps us alive. If ozone gets in there, it'll burn a hole in that tissue. Over the years, this leads to all kinds of respiratory problems, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It also makes you more susceptible to adult pulmonary disorders that so many people are exposed or basically have today. Ozone is very hard on trees. Leaves, pine needles, gets into the stomata and burns the stomata. And so that you see forests begin to decline, production of fruit trees, alfalfa, crops. Basically, once that ozone level gets above 40 parts per billion, and this hasn't changed over the years, they have shown you begin to see a decrease in production in the crop. Ozone plumes extend over 200 miles. And so, and it may not even, there may not even be as much ozone right over where these things are going into the air. They have to go up into the air and cook. But as that air mass is moving to the northeast, the general flow, that's where you're going to begin to see the damage.
Last year, the Air Quality Control Commission at the state passed a new rule on VOC, or volatile organic compound emissions from well operations or natural gas operations in the statewide area. Some of the readings last year showed levels that really pushed the EPA's national threshold.
Every one of those compressors, dehydrators, well pads, pumps that you see that are making it possible for us to get the gas, all those delivery systems to get the gas to us, are also releasing what they call fugitive gases, very dangerous gases, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, as well as methane. The fugitive methane that's coming off of these operations is enough to create tons of what we call VOCs in our air every day. You can't see them. Most of them you can't smell. But they're there. And they do have harmful effects.
On the air emissions, you know, a lot of it also, there's still the issues of the people who live right close to a drilling rig or a well, or, you know, some of these facilities. You might not be personally affected if you're miles away, but you can be pretty personally affected if your bedroom is right next to something where you're smelling things.